guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be making a winter coat, which I've never done before on my channel. And I'm really excited about this one because it's going to be one of those like stylish, like longer coats with the lapel. And I haven't actually sewn a lapel in like a really long time, so I hope this goes well. But for the fabric, I'm using this really pretty white flannel fabric that I got at Joann's. And I bought 3 yards of it because it was on sale when I got it. And then for a lining fabric, I also got this fabric from Joann's. And I always like to get fun lining fabrics because you're really not going to see it, and it's just like a nice place to have a pop of color or pattern. So for this jacket's lining, I have this really cute floral print. And you're just going to want something nice and thin and kind of silky so it's easy to get the jacket on and off. Because if you use kind of a thicker fabric, let's say another flannel for the lining, it's going to be really hard to get it on and off because of the friction. So you want something more on the silky side. And I also got 3 yards of this fabric. And to give the coat some more structure around the lapel, I'm also going to be using a fusible interfacing. And I got one that's slightly more on the thick side than I usually go for, just to make the lapel lay really nicely. But any kind of interfacing will really do. I just like the ones that are fusible because it's a little bit easier to like work with all the layers. And a yard of interfacing would probably be plenty, but I just like to buy a whole bunch at a time because it's nice to have on hand. And with all that said, it is finally time to start cutting our pieces out. Because I am obviously working with a striped pattern, I tried my best to match up all of my stripes when I was laying out my fabrics so that when I cut it, my pieces would be identical. And that way I can match up all the lines later when I start sewing. But of course, this is just an extra detail that I felt like doing. You obviously don't have to do this if you don't want to, and you also don't have to work with a striped fabric, so it's really up to you. So the first piece I'm showing you guys here is the front piece, and we're going to cut 2 of these just out of our striped fabric, but then I'm going to use that piece to copy for my lining piece. So we're going to do the front part of it out of their same striped fabric and then the other half of it out of the floral fabric. And there should be some overlap between these pieces so we can sew them together. And then here are the measurements for the striped piece. We're basically just tracing the front of it and just cutting the strip out. And then you're going to cut 2 out of the floral fabric and then 2 out of the striped fabric. But the ones out of the striped fabric, we're also going to cut 2 out of an interfacing. And then this one here is the back piece, and you're going to just need 1 of these pieces. But then it's going to be kind of the same deal as the front piece was. So out of our striped fabric, I'm going to trace around the top edge and cut this little circle out. And then I'm going to make the rest of it out of this floral fabric. Again, they should have a little bit of an overlap. And so here's the measurements just for the little round piece, and then everything else is obviously the floral. Next up, this is the piece you're going to need to make the lapel collar for the jacket. And the very center of it should have a very slightly rounded shape. Next we have the pocket pieces, and so you're going to need 2 on the left and then 4 of the ones on the right. And then lastly, here are the sleeve pieces, and we're going to cut 2 out of our striped fabric and 2 out of the lining. And when you cut sleeves, they should be pretty much symmetrical, except on the curved edge on the top. One of the curves should be slightly bigger than the other. Now, before we get to sewing, I wanted to quickly take a minute and talk about today's sponsor, Green Chef. And Green Chef is a USDA certified organic company that makes eating well easy and affordable. They make it super simple by sending you pre-prepped organic ingredients along with their easy to follow recipes that get shipped directly to your door. And they offer a wide variety of meal options that can fit any kind of lifestyle, including keto and paleo, gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, fasted fit, and Mediterranean, so that anyone can have a delicious but balanced meal. And they also make it super easy in case you ever want to switch up which meal plan you're on to try out something new. And honestly guys, I am not a big chef. My brother does most of the cooking usually. But Green Chef recipes are super easy to follow. They have pictures to guide you along. And me and my brother actually had a really good time creating this recipe together. And it was also super tasty, which is saying a lot for me because I am a super picky eater. So if you guys are ready to give Green Chef a try for yourself, you can go to greenchef.us and use my code PaperStxrs130 to get $130 off plus free shipping. Thank you to Green Chef for sponsoring this video, and now it is back to sewing. Alright, so the first thing that I actually did on this jacket was I attached all of my interfacing pieces to the lining pieces that they went with. And when you're attaching fusible interfacing, one side of the fabric is going to have like a bumpy texture, and that's actually like where the glue is. So you want to make sure that that side is facing down on top of your fabric, and then you're going to put your iron on top of that piece for 10 seconds and hold it there so that the glue fuses to the fabric. And you're going to do that all the way down all of your pieces. So fusing interfacing takes a while, but it does look really nice. And now that that is all done, I'm going to start by sewing my lining pieces first and pin the sides that go together all the way down and then stitch them together so we have one full lining piece. And I'm going to do the same thing on the back piece as well with the little curve cut out. Okay, now our lining pieces should all be sewn, and they should look exactly like, and they should look exactly like the front pieces with these extra panels sewn into them. So they should be the exact same size. And now we're going to take these pieces and we're going to sew their shoulder seams and side seams together. And right now we're going to be making like 2 different jackets and we're going to sew them together later. So we're going to do the lining pieces all together and then we're going to do the regular pieces all together. So I'm just going to pin one front piece down either side of the back piece and sew all those seams together. And because I am the perfectionist that I am, I'm also going to try to match up all of my stripes to make everything nice and even. This jacket is looking really, really nice. And now the next step is going to be adding the lapel collar. So we're going to take our collar pieces, and I attached interfacing to only one of them. And the interfacing one is actually going to go on the front side, and then the non-interfacing one is going on the lining side. And this is because when we fold over the collar, we want the non-lining piece to be the one that's showing. So I'm going to find the center of both the collar and the jacket, and both of my centers are actually on one of these lines here. And then I'm going to take the side that kind of curves up a little bit and attach that one to the collar. And I'm of course going to start by pinning their centers together and then continuing that all the way down the collar. And when we get to this kind of curved part, we're just going to curve the jacket to follow it, and we're going to stop once we reach this straight edge here. And then I'm going to pin the other color the exact same way on the other piece and sew down this edge here. And now we've got the collar done, so this is what it should be looking like. And you should have this really cute collar with this kind of cutout triangle piece here, and it's looking really good. I'm going to start off today working with the outer layer of our coat, and I think the next step should be adding in our pockets. So I just tried it on and I marked out where I want the pockets to go, and I'm going to take these little rectangle pieces we cut out, fold them in half, and sew down either side. And then I'm going to trim these pieces down and turn them right side out. And now we're going to bring out our coat, and I'm going to lay it out right where I marked it. And I'm kind of placing mine on this diagonal here. And so I'm going to take the piece we just sewed, and I'm going to put the raw side up and pin it down on my line here. And then I'm going to take one of my pocket lining pieces and I'm going to put it face down on top of that piece, making sure to line up the raw edges. And then I'm going to take one of our other pocket pieces and also put it face down, but I'm going to put it so that the raw edges are touching. And now I'm going to kind of sew a rectangle shape around these raw edges here. So I'm going to start it right where the finished edge of this under piece is, go across this raw edge here, pivot where that piece ends, and then go across the other side. And once it's sewn, it should look like this. And now I need to cut the hole open for the pocket. So I'm basically going to cut right where those raw edges meet, but I don't want to go all the way to the edge of this rectangle. So I'm going to stop about 1 centimeter before we reach it. And then instead of going to the center, I'm going to go to either corner. And on the kind of tougher spots, you just want to keep wiggling your scissors back and forth. You really don't want to go like this and try to cut with this part of your scissors, because you're probably going to accidentally cut farther than you need to, and then you're kind of screwed. And I have done that to a really pretty dress and it was not fun. And once this part is cut open, we can push our pockets towards the back side of this. And then we're going to turn it over to the back, and we're going to put either side of our pockets together, and we're going to stitch around these 3 edges here. So I'm just going to pin these edges together and sew around it. And then we can turn it back to the right side, and we're going to take this little flap that's left here and fold it up, making sure that everything is laying nice and flat. And then we're going to pin down either side of it and stitch it down. And now we have a finished pocket, and I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side. Now that we have our snazzy little pockets, I think it's time to add on the sleeves. And basically we're just going to fold them in half and sew across this seam here. And I'm going to be doing the same thing to the lining pieces too. And now that these have all been sewn, I'm going to switch my machine to a basting stitch, and I'm going to add 2 parallel basting stitches across the top edge, starting about here, going around the top and ending on the other side. Alright, now our sleeves are all prepared to be sewn to the actual jacket. So I'm going to bring back in my front piece, and I'm going to be working with it inside out, and then I'm going to turn the sleeve piece right side out. And so like I mentioned, on the top, one of the sleeve pieces should be slightly smaller, and that one is going to go towards the front side, and then the bigger one is going to go towards the back side. So I'm going to line up the bottom of the sleeve with the side seam of the jacket and pin these pieces together. And then I'm going to line up the top of the sleeve with the top of the jacket. And now the sleeve piece should be a little bit bigger than our actual armhole, so that's why we included these basting stitches. So I'm going to pull on 2 of the threads on the same side of the fabric to gather up the sleeve just a little bit so that it fits nicely into our armhole without getting any like big puckers or anything. And then I'm just going to pin these pieces together, and once everything is lined up, we can sew all the way around it. And I'm going to be doing that with all of the sleeves. Okay, we are finally on to the really exciting step of sewing the front to the lining. So basically, all we're going to do is we're going to line these pieces up pretty side to pretty side, and I'm going to sew all around the perimeter of the pieces, leaving a gap open in the bottom without sewing so we have a place to turn these right side out. And you want to make sure that the space that you're leaving to turn it right side out is going to be big enough to fit the whole jacket through it, because I have definitely made these areas too small before. And once it's all pinned, we can go ahead and sew around the perimeter. And before we turn it right side out, I'm actually going to do a few little finishing details that will make it lay nicer. So at these kind of corners here, I'm just going to dog ear them, which means cut straight across right before the seam. And then also on the lapel where we sewed into this kind of corner here, I'm going to cut it down like this so that it has enough room to open up. And same thing with the pocket, you want to make sure you're cutting this piece slowly so we don't actually cut through it. And then we can turn it right side out. And then you can also take like a pencil or some other kind of pointy tool and put it through the hole that we left and kind of poke out any corners so that they lay really nicely. And then the last part of this is just going to be hand sewing up this hole that we left here. Alright, now I just got back from taking our jacket to the iron and it is looking so snazzy, you guys. And now I'm going to teach you guys how to kind of cheat a really professional looking sleeve finish. So while I was at the iron, I also decided where I wanted the finished length of my sleeve to be, and I folded it up and just ironed it out nice and straight. And then I took my lining piece and I also cut it down so these pieces would have a little bit of an overlap when everything is laid out nicely. And then I'm just going to unfold these pieces so the raw edges are together here. And I'm starting with the bottom seam to make sure everything is nice and straight. And basically I'm going to fold over both edges just a little bit and pin them together all the way around. And this doesn't have to be too perfect, so don't worry about it too much. And also, I said I'm cheating this technique because if you want to do it the really snazzy way, you should really hand stitch it, but I just really didn't feel like doing more hand stitching, so we're just going to machine stitch it, which won't make it lay quite as nice, but it's good enough for me. And now I'm going to put my machine onto my zigzag stitch. I'm going to change the width of it to be 4, and then I'm going to make the length of it the longest it can possibly be. And then we're going to sew this zigzag all across the very top edge of what we just pinned, but I'm going to let my machine kind of go off the side a little bit so not the whole zigzag is on the side of the sleeve. And then I'm just going to sew that all the way around. And then once we're done sewing it, we can kind of pull the lining away from this piece to kind of flatten out these stitches we just did. And then we can fold up the sleeve where we wanted the finished length, and we have this really nice finished edge. And now all that is left to do is to add our buttons along the front. And I decided to add 3 of them, so I just tried it on and marked out where I want them to go. And then I'm just going to make a buttonhole stitch on our buttons, and then the jacket is done! And here is the finished coat. I know the little title cards for this video were like a winter coat because when I was making this coat it was actually really cold outside. But then the day that I had to model it, it ended up being 70 degrees outside. So luckily this coat is really versatile. So I was able to put a cute outfit together with it nonetheless. But yeah, now it is 30 degrees outside. So I'm going to be wearing this coat a lot. And I'm honestly so happy with how it turned out. I used to be kind of scared of doing these fancy lapel collars, but this one turned out so perfectly. It lays so nicely, and the color with these pockets make it look super snazzy and professional. And I'm really excited to be cozy this winter. But I hope you guys liked this video, and if you guys give this coat a try, you can always send me a picture on Instagram. I love seeing your creations, and I hope you guys stay tuned next week for a new video. So I hope to see you there. Bye!